Hello, guys, and welcome back to the Rovers Report, where today we're joined by Tom once again, and we'll be going through our top 10 Rovers forwards from our time of watching. Now, just a bit of a disclaimer, forwards for me is sort of can be a striker, a winger. I wouldn't put a cam in there, so the likes of sort of John Joe O'Toole or Elliot Anderson won't be making this list. And this list will also be from our time of watching. So, I mean, you might be a bit different here, Tom, but I think the start for me would be your Lamberts and your Walkers. And someone that I've sort of used to divide it is I won't include Junior Agogo in this, but that is that's the sort of time period for me. Would you
Yeah,
say?
that's right for me because my first season was 2006, 2007. So I
Yeah.
believe Junior Gogo left that summer.
Yeah, exactly. So that works perfectly. And I think the way we're going to do this for you guys is we're going to start from 10 and work our way to number one. We'll both give, obviously, each the different rankings and we'll have a bit of a debate about it. Be really interesting for us to hear your guys' opinions. So make sure you let us know if you agree with us in the comments. And without further ado, should we just get into it, mate? If you want to
Yeah.
say your number 10.
Yeah. So number 10 is Jermaine Easter.
Mm-hmm.
I think he did bring that very vital experience at a time when when we were in the conference and in League Two as well. He did arrive with quite a bit of fanfare. I do think he quite lived up to that.
Mm-hmm.
I think he was curtailed. His time Rovers was curtailed by injury. I know he had that knee injury pretty much straight away after he joined. I think it was his second game for Rovers in the conference, and he was out for the rest of that season. And then he was at Rovers 2 or 3 seasons after that, and you could tell the younger players really liked being around him. As a senior player, he played for Wales and in a championship with Palace and Millwall. I just think with the sort of playing history he had at the time, he perhaps could have done a little bit more, but I think he played a vital role in terms of that experienced player that we've seen with Coots this season, just
Mm-hmm.
gone, and Whelan. So I think Jammer makes my 10, but as number 10 itself.
Yeah.
What
I
about
think
you?
I think I've got Jammer at 10 actually as well, mate. And I think I said this to you before we started recording, but there's not actually a huge amount of options, is there? I think my number 11 was Matty Harold, which I mean, we won't go into him, but it sort of shows you the options we've got to choose from. But I think you said something quite important there, which was I think he only scored 12 goals for us in his 2 or 3 seasons. But the reason I have him up there is because the role that he was sort of given by DC, I think he did. He played it well. He was never going to play every single game for us, but when he did come in, he offered that experience. He's obviously got quality on the ball, and to be fair, I don't remember him scoring too many important goals, but he would often pop up. Do you know what I mean? And the fact that he only scored 12, maybe he could have got more, but I think he makes that top 10 for me. Maybe a bit judged on his history prior to coming to Rovers.
Yeah.
But you got to remember he did go up twice with us, and almost. I mean, I think Coots has had a much better impact on the pitch, but you can't discount how important it is to have those sort of characters around that promotion teams. And I think Jammer did that well.
Exactly. I think his hold-up player as well was really impressive. That's probably what impressed me the most. He brought players like Bowden and Taylor into the game very easily.
Yeah.
So did Rory Gaffney, someone who also appears in my list a bit
Mhm.
later on. But yeah, I mean, he wasn't. He was only. I think he was smaller, shorter than 6 foot, but his hold-up play was excellent, and he did pop up with a couple of goals and that vital assist as well. Was it? No, was it a vital assist for? Yeah, well, it was a vital assist for. No, it
Brown.
wasn't for Lee Brown. Sorry, it was Jammer to Taylor at the post, wasn't it?
Yeah, 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 that was it.
So a pre-assist, or whatever
Yeah.
the positions call it nowadays. But I think he came on in that Dagenham game and made a difference. From
Yeah.
what I know, it was a fairly long time ago. Makes me feel quite old thinking about it now. But
Mm.
he was he was a good player. You could see that he'd played at a higher level,
Yeah.
but perhaps one that could have done a little bit more.
No, I agree with that, mate. I think a good start for us in our top 10. And who have you got placed at number 9 then, mate?
I have a certain Rory Gaffney placed at number 9, very similar to Jammer, obviously the same era. of recent Rovers history. Someone who could also hold the ball up well. I wasn't completely sure what his stronger foot was. He could shoot right and left. That his initial loan spell back in the 2015-16 season from Cambridge, he was a beast, wasn't he? He was completely different.
I don't think I've seen many players come in and make that sort of impact. I think it was something like 5 in 7, and that just doesn't happen too often. What we're more accustomed to seeing, isn't it, is a player comes in, barely even makes many appearances, and then just sort of gets sent back, having made Sorry, carry on, mate.
So I think it's also because in that early part of DC's reign, we did have quite a few target men who part of Taylor, especially in the conference season. We had Adam Cunnington, remember him? Blissett.
Alex Wall was, I don't want to put anyone down, but what a terrible player he was.
Yeah, I remember he hit the post at Wrexham, didn't he, with an absolute thunderbolt, and then he was only on loan for a month.
Yeah.
He didn't really do too much.
Cunnington did all right, didn't he, for the first couple of years? I seem to remember him getting... Was he only here for 6 months or so?
I think it was going to be a 6-month job, but then we must have cut it short at some point. He did start off fairly well. I know he scored that nice goal against Woking when Dave Martin pinged it across. It was the first time volley.
You got a great memory, mate.
It was, there were a lot of sort of failed signings as target men to partner Matty Taylor at the beginning of DC's reign, and Gaffney sort of made that role his own and obviously rotated with Jammer. Obviously, Jammer was kind of a different player himself, but I think Gaffney, with that loan spell as well, and he did okay in his final season for us in League One, which I think was 2017-18. He didn't quite make the step up, but he was strong. He could shoot with both feet, and I think just for being in that era as well, it was for me it was a successful era. For a lot of those fans, it probably wasn't, but I'm talking more sort of the couple of seasons after the double promotion, and I really liked Rory Gaffney, and he'd always give 100%, which is a very easy thing to say as a football fan, and it's kind of meaningless at times. But I was impressed by him, and he did score more goals than Jammer, which is probably the reason why he's number 9, not number 10.
I think
that's the captain forward. So goals is probably the most important factor here.
Yeah, and that's why I had him as well. Hopefully there's going to be some. It's not going to be the same for all of our options, but so far it is. But no, I think what you said, I had down in my notes, he was a hell of a grafter, wasn't he? And that's not necessarily what your primary attribute you want in your striker, but it did make a difference. And I think it's an important point for us, especially when we're making this list, is that a lot of our time watching Rovers has been in League Two. So, his statistics say he doesn't technically make it in League One, but that's most of our players we're going off haven't been in League One for that long, have they? You've got 1 or 2 seasons here, and the guys that are higher up this list are probably going to be the ones that played in League One. So that being said, should we move on to our number 8?
Indeed, and I have Mustafa Carriola at number 8. I know he was a wide midfielder winger, but I guess class as a forward, and we've spoken about him before in the Rovers all-time 11 video, and obviously he could beat his man, incredibly strong, great at cutting inside, shooting with his right foot. And I think he was just very impressive in a very dour Rovers side. It was not very nice to watch that team under McGee. Was it McGee or under Buckle, rather? Buckle and McGee.
Yeah.
And actually Buckle didn't start him. I remember he didn't really start the first few games, and it was a League Cup tie, which we won on penalties.
He went and played for our reserve teams, mate.
What's that?
He was put into our reserve teams for a couple of games, which remarkable. Which, think how good he is.
It's just, that's astounding to hear that. And he was obviously, as I said, incredibly quick winger, and someone who I think technically was a better player than both Gaffney and Jammer. And we've seen that in terms of the fact that he played in the Championship for 6 or 7 seasons. I think he was out playing in Cyprus last time I heard. Not bad life, eh? So yeah, and obviously an international player as well. So I mean, Jammer played for Wales a couple of times, but I think Carriola played for Gambia. Am I right in saying that?
I think so, mate. Yeah.
So another international player, and but for me, what stood out was just the pure power and the dribbling ability, and that's why he's a number 8 ahead of the previous two.
That's perfect. Yeah. So for me, interestingly, at number 8, I've actually got Ellis Harrison, and although I think you could say that Carriola might have scored less goals for Rovers, and potentially didn't have as bigger impacts, I think Ellis Harrison actually, when you think about it, he was obviously important in a lot of our playoff campaigns, but he was never the main man. And I think that, I mean, it depends how you judge this list. For me, I'm going off sort of when they were at Rovers, the quality of them. And I think for me, Carriola just takes, I mean, I know Ellis Harrison is obviously a huge fan's favourite for Rovers, can be divisive amongst the fan base. But yeah, for me, I just think Carriola has to be higher than Harrison. So for me, Ellis Harrison at number 8. I mean, I don't know how you feel about that, but
yeah, I mean, Ellis appears higher up on my list, and I think it's very interesting because we only really got a good half season out of Carriola, and it was such was his impact. It was very obvious that he was a good player, and he immediately moved to a championship club that was in Middlesbrough that was chasing for the playoffs at the time. So yeah, that's it's not a bad choice at all, mate.
Mm-hmm. And I'll go on to my number 7, mate, which again is not Carriola. For me, I've put Aaron Collins in there, and I think maybe the first thing that I'll have to explain, I don't know, you might have put Collins higher than Harrison, but
I put him the same actually. He was my number 7.
Number 7. Yeah. Well, yeah, I think for me, when you consider that with the recency bias, people might not give credit to Collins, but I think when you look back on this, I mean, he scored 18 goals this season, Collins, and that's not something that Rovers strikers have achieved very often in the last 15 or so years. I think some of the goals he scored were massively important. He almost single-handedly won us that game away at Rochdale. Mm-hmm. He's obviously had a big part in Scunthorpe, and he was sort of an ever-present in our team. And especially when you think that, going back to the start of the season, how many games that he went? Was it 12 or 15?
Well, it wasn't until the start of November when he actually scored the first league goal, if I'm correct. And as you said, he was a mainstay in that team and someone who in half a season became the main striker for promotion team. It's an impressive feat in itself. And I think we obviously haven't seen perhaps the best of him yet, because he's playing in a league like League One next season, which favours players like him. League Two, I think typically, and maybe I'm thinking stereotypically, but League Two favours obviously big target men, and I think League One, a player like Collins, who has if he has the players around him, or if a similar ilk like Anderson, etc., I think we could see another really good season out of Collins, and that's why I think he's not further down, i.e. 8, 9 or 10 in my list. Is the fact that those players may have scored goals for Rovers, or maybe more goals than Collins, but that's obviously because he's only been at Rovers for a season, and so I think we're sort of yet to see the best of Collins. And if he gets a full season of scoring goals in League One, so maybe I'm putting like a potential premium on him, but I think just the way he plays as well, there's something about him, and I think I've mentioned before, there's only, for me, one of the few gauges of a good player in lower league football is I don't know how to describe it. It's a sort of player who can get their foot in front of the ball and push it away from a defender. And the amount of times he's done that to give himself half a yard.
They're almost one step ahead, aren't they? Yeah. They just got that extra bit of sharpness to them. I know exactly what you mean, mate.
And you see Collins has that. And so, yeah, I'm on another note. I'm looking forward to seeing him play next season. It's going to be really interesting to see how he gets on in League One. I think might have played a little bit of League One football before, but he's predominantly played in League Two. Mm-hmm. So it's going to be interesting and something to look forward to for Rovers fans.
Mate, I'm definitely looking forward to it, especially either if Loft sort of comes good and starts to cement his place in the team, or we bring in another more experienced and not necessarily a target man, but someone that he can bounce off of. Because I mean, that's another impressive thing is he led the line for Rovers the whole season pretty much. When you consider he's not a striker. So he's more of a number 10, isn't he? So the fact he scored 18 goals this season from that position is highly impressive. And that's why he's at number 7 for me. So my number 6, who you had at number 8, was Muzzy Carriola, which you've obviously spoken in depth about. So have you got Harrison at number 6?
I haven't. I've got him at number 5, and this might be fairly unpopular for a lot of people. I've got Richard Walker at number 6.
I can understand that.
That's purely because he didn't take the step up from League Two. Very incredibly good League Two striker. Amazing left foot of his. Great strike of the ball. A lot of finesse with his finishes. Good hold up play with Ricky. Obviously, it was a bit unorthodox at the time playing 2 target men up top. You'd think you'd have a number 9 target man and then perhaps a number 10 running off the flick-ons. But I think for me, Richard Walker obviously will always have legendary status at Rovers with that, the 2 goals at Wembley to take us up. The second goal at Wembley is probably one of the best finishes I've seen.
Especially when you consider, like you said, the sort of player that he is, for him to score that goal.
Just took it. He took it around the keeper, didn't he? And then lofted it with the left foot. Unbelievable.
He stroked it, didn't he? It was the most delicate stroke, but
it was unbelievable. But the reason why he's at number 6, not higher up, is because he didn't take the step up to League One. I think I was looking at his stats recently. I think he only scored 4 goals next season after scoring 20 the season before. I think also the season before promotion, which was my first season, he scored 20 plus, 2005, 2006. So I think, he was obviously a great striker, and he's a Rovers legend, but he's number 6, and Ellis is actually higher up.
Well, so that's interesting for me because I've got Walker at number 5, and I think you made a good point there. Is he's sort of immortalised, isn't he, in Rovers folklore because of those 2 goals? And don't get me wrong, he's obviously a great striker, one of our best ever strikers that we've seen. But I think that massively helps him out. Do you know what I mean? He scored 40 goals for Rovers over 4 seasons. So, I mean, it's for League Two, League One strikers, that's not terrible. 10 goals a season is obviously good. But yeah, I think I agree with you. He's my number 5, and I've got Carriola at 6. And I think you're right in the fact that he never really made that step up to League One and did numbers there. And my top 4 are all players that have gone on to do well at League One. So I've got Walker at number 5. Do you want to say anything about Harrison at number 5 for you?
So excuse me. I think the main reason is that step up to League One. In his last season at Rovers in League One, Ellis scored, I think, 18 league goals, and he was on fire in that period after Christmas. And for me, it's almost the fact that he had that one season. It was when he first came into the first team picture. When he was 18 and playing under John Ward, and he just lit up the league. And then he had that absolutely dreadful full season season after when we relegated to the conference. And I remember he sort of switched from a winger to a striker, and he scored maybe one league goal, and DC transfer listed him. The fact that he went from being transfer listed by a team that had been relegated to the conference to the top scorer of the team, which finished 13th in League One or whatever in a few years. I mean, it's relatively rags to riches, but it's still very impressive in itself. I think his hold-up play was always useful, penalty taker, the goal at Wembley in the playoff final against Grimsby. Yeah. I think he didn't live up to his potential, and it's a shame that he hasn't really kicked on. He was at Ipswich for one season in the champ, wasn't he? And it didn't go well, and he's just been playing in League One since, and he's just recently signed a new contract at Fleetwood, so we'll be up against him next season. Yeah, I think for me, it's the fact that he scored goals in League One, and he scored a hat-trick against Northampton League One as well, with some very, very good finishes. And he was inconsistent, but I think he, on his day, was probably a better striker than Richard Walker, because he was more dynamic. and I'd say probably say better physicality as well in terms of winning the ball.
I think you've actually swayed me a bit there. I'm looking at my list now, and I'm thinking I might put Harrison at 5, Walker at 6, Carriola at 7, and Collins at 8, and sort of bump everyone down. Because I think it's hard though, isn't it? Because with Harrison, is like he did have that one great season, but I don't know if this is just our fan base took a disliking to him at the start. But do you know, every season sort of felt like it's almost like, you know, when you go to parents' evening, it would be like doing well, but he could be outstanding, and it's sort of like you're right, he could have been so much more. And I think that's maybe why I don't want to give him the credit that he deserves, because I'm frustrated at what he hasn't done. But then again, that's me not looking at what he has done. So no, I think, like I said, I think you've persuaded me. So I'm going to have him at number 5 now. And my number 4, I don't know if I'll get stick for this. I think the top 4 for me are all quality players now we're getting into. And my number 4 is Matty Taylor. Now, I know that he's obviously scored more goals than a couple of the players above him, and I'm not taking anything away from his influence in that team. I mean, without his goals, we wouldn't have gone up to the League Two or League One. But my arguments for the players above him, I just think one of them had a bigger impact at a better level. One of them, I think, is just a better all-round player within the same team as him. And then one of them is, I mean, it's number 1, who I don't think either of us would dispute.
Yeah.
But yeah, you look at his stats, Matty Taylor, he got 61 goals for us in 118 games. So that's pretty much around 1 in 2. At any level of football, that's quality, isn't it? And then he got 27 league goals in that League Two season, 16 in League One. So like I said, he's arguably the most influential player in those 2 campaigns. So he definitely cements that top 4 spot for me.
And that's those 16 in League One were in half the season, because that obviously left halfway through to join a lot down the road. So I've put him higher up, but you know, there's no doubting the fact that he was a great goal scorer, and he did have a lot of chances. I mean, he must have had about 10 chances in that Dagenham game. The absolute sitter before the Brown winner, and it took a while to get going, didn't it? It wasn't until probably after Christmas time in that conference season when he started scoring for fun.
There's quite a lot of parallels, isn't there, between the team we've just seen last season and that team is the start of the season. Do you remember people were fuming at Darryl Clark, asking for his head? Same with Bowden this year. Strikers weren't firing. And then as they grew into the season, you see these players start to flourish, don't you?
Yeah, it's weird. There are a lot of parallels in that. And the fact that if we talk about League Two, taking the previous League Two promotion, he was promoted in the final minutes of the season against an already relegated team.
Yeah.
And also we were only obviously in the top 3 for the last few minutes of the season. So that was slightly bizarre. It's like today at the cricket with Joe Root scoring 10,000 test runs. The same age as Alistair Cook, exactly. I think it's like 30 years, 177 days or something like that. Bizarre.
Good bit of trivia, that much. Good bit of trivia.
Yeah, that'll be in a pub quiz about 10 years' time. So, yeah, I've put Taylor higher up. I've put him number 2.
Who have you got in at number 4 then?
Number 4, I've got JCH.
Interesting.
In terms of the great escape almost under Coughlin, he was I don't think I've seen a 6-month spell like that from any Rovers player. Every long shot he was taking, or any shot within 35 yards, was going to the corner all of a sudden.
Yeah.
And when we signed him, there wasn't much of a positive reaction at all, because he'd just been released by Cov. He obviously had incredible potential before making his Cov debut at 17 and then bouncing around Championship and League One. But I mean, what an impact he made that in that first half season. He was.
That's what when I was saying about Gaffney, saying there's not many players that had a big of impact as him. I think he's arguably the player that's had the biggest impact whilst I've seen.
Yeah, it
And
was everything. Everything he touched turned to goal. He had the Midas touch.
he did,
And
man. I've got him I've actually got him at number 2.
yeah,
And for me, when I was making my notes on it, I looked at his stats, which is 24 goals in 42 games. No one apart from the great can match that at League One level, really. You know what I mean? That's excellent statistics there. And I mean, I consider him almost to be like an all-round striker. You know, maybe you can take away the pressing game, but when he was, because I know when he left us, he was sort of unfit and out of shape a little bit. When he was in his prime, mate, he was like a prime boxer, wasn't he? So he's strong, he was quick, he was and I've also got on my notes, he could score all types of goals. You know, you just touched on it there. I don't think I've ever seen a player score as many long-range screamers as him, but then he'd quite as easily get your tap-ins and your headers, wouldn't he? So
that overhead kick against Oxford, I think. Was it Oxford or Aki?
I think it was Accrington, yeah.
Yeah, as well. He's just what an unbelievable player. And it was sad that COVID curtailed the end of that season. We couldn't give him a proper send-off because we owe him a lot because he saved us from relegation that season with Coughlin in charge.
Mm-hmm.
And he was just, as you said, he was a bit of a, he was a brute, an absolute bully, or maybe that's not the right word to use, but he was incredibly good at using his physicality and also had the technique to match as well. I mean, that left foot of his was a weapon, and he scored some absolute screamers, and as you said, could score tap-ins and had really good positioning to get into those areas of the penalty box as well. So, I wouldn't argue against putting him in sort of the top 2, top 3. Mm-hmm. I just think for me, the Taylor, I like Taylor because of his finesse, to be honest. I've really liked his link-up play. I think it's such a shame he left halfway through that League One season because he could have scored 30 plus goals in League One. It's very obvious to see that he's arguably not thrown his career away, but he hasn't achieved what he could have achieved. It's very obvious for a lot of people to see that he's exactly where he was when he left Rovers.
It's a shame, isn't it, mate? Because like you said, I think with the right team around him and the right manager, he could have. I don't think he would have ever gone beyond mid-table championship, but he could have flourished at a sort of lower level championship team. The thing for me that I find interesting in this argument is, I know it depends on the team and what sort of style of play we're trying to play, but the reason that I had JCH higher than Taylor is that if I was looking for a striker right now to come into the team, I think I would go for JCH. I mean, you might disagree with that, but I think for all the teams I've watched, I would have him in there ahead of Taylor.
Interesting you say that, because JCH, from what I remember, played up front by himself. Taylor was always 2, right?
Mm.
Up front. So if you're looking for a raw striker, arguably you take JCH there.
Yeah, no, that's true, mate. And so that looks like we've both got Billy Bowden number 3, unless right. Yeah. And I think Billy Bowden, for me, I have him above Taylor just because in terms of technical ability, he's right up there for me. I think on that list, he's probably the best in terms of that. I think you put him up there with Elliot Anderson. And I just think, mate, the fact that he was not played as a striker, he scored 35 goals for us in 95 games, which is pretty much 1 every 3 games, which as a winger is outstanding. And I just think that some of the moments he had whilst you watched him, it was just outrageous, wasn't he?
He was an unbelievable player, and I think Chris Lyons summed it up incredibly well. He did an interview with the Post recently, and with Frosty, I think, and I think he summed up by saying he could just do anything with the ball, and as a midfielder, but the thing is, it's very easy for wingers to beat their man, go to the byline, cross it in. Bowden would come inside onto his left foot multiple times a game. He could go down the outside, beat his man. For me, it was when he came, that one step over onto his left, first time shot from there.
Mm. It's a bit like what you said about Collins. Those sort of markers for players that you go, okay, you're a good player and you're a bit above this level. Is similar to what Elliot Anderson has, Bowden has, is when he's doing stuff, you just sort of think, oh, you haven't done anything exceptional there, but somehow you've just got rid of 3 players around you.
Yeah.
You know, he'd always have time and always have space. And you think, oh, he's not, isn't it like the obvious skills when you do like a roulette, a step over, you go, oh, okay, that's impressive. The ball was stuck to his feet. And to go with that, he was a great finisher as well, wasn't he? So,
yeah, it was brilliant. And the fact that he was unattached and we picked him up on a free, we signed him on a 6-month contract, I think, originally.
It's mental, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, arguably one of the best Rovers signs of all time, I think, especially, well, if we're talking about our period of time watching Rovers.
Definitely, mate. Like, especially considering you said that he was signed for free.
And I mean, yeah, he started a bit slowly in League One, but I think it was around Christmas time, he scored a hat-trick against Cov in the league. I think it was Boxing Day. And he went from strength to strength, and he became our main man once Taylor left. But arguably, I think he's a better footballer than Matty Taylor. I think it's a real shame that he didn't really. He's had that really bad ACL injury at PNE because he could have really perhaps cemented a regular spot for PNE, who are obviously a playoff chasing team. Excuse me, for most seasons. So it's a real shame that obviously injuries have curtailed his career progression. But I mean, what a player! Just someone who you knew, like you'd want the midfielders to give the ball to him, because every time he got the ball, you knew something was going to happen.
Yeah,
and his touch was perfect every time. You knew that what worked for me as well. It was seeing that overlap with Ledbetter as well with Bowden. So he was also a great passer of the ball and just an all-round fantastic footballer. And it's a real shame that he hasn't really kicked on, because he exactly the same as Taylor. He is in a similar position to when he left Rovers, which was 4.5 years ago now.
It is a shame, Matt. And I think the ages that they're at, you can't really see them going any higher, can you? I mean, if Oxford go up, I'm sure they'd probably go with them. But yeah, no, you're right. There is definitely a lot of similarities between the two players. And yeah, I could interchange them between 4, 3, and 2. But I think perhaps the one position on our list where it's not up for debate is obviously Ricky Lambert, number 1, isn't it? And yeah. I mean, we've done a few videos where he's come up. There's not really much you can say. I mean, statistics: 51 goals in 128 games, including an impressive 42 in 2 seasons in League One. Which that for me is sort of, if you want to just, obviously he's got the quality which we saw after he left. But if you want to go by our statistics, when the player's at Rovers, he was banging them in League One. He got into that League One team of the season in, I think it was 08. And 08-09, yeah, I think so. And you know what I mean? We haven't had too many players that have stood out in League One, and he is one of them. So, I mean, we've got, I think it's 4 minutes to speak about it. I'm sure you could rattle it off, mate. But do you just want to summarise why he's there for you?
I mean, it's just the pure striking ability, that the way he hit the ball. I don't think there have been many players in the lower leagues who could strike a ball like he did. I think a great example of that is the goal away at Luton Town, when the ball's dropped over his shoulder and he's just volleyed it.
So hard, mate. So hard.
It was an absolute piss take how good he was. And you know what I loved about that season as well. Do you remember Simon Cox also scored a hatful of goals that season for Swindon?
I think they were joint top scorer, mate. If I remember rightly, yeah.
It was a great competition between the two of them. And just what a player Lambert was. He was it took him a little while to get going. First season, he was he probably had a few doubters after that, but just pure technical striking ability. Nobody ever will ever come close. I don't think, for Rovers.
Not anytime soon.
Not anytime soon. I mean, when we've got the Fruit Market Stadium with Premier League, no, it was.
It's hard to say anymore, isn't it, mate?
It's hard to say anymore. I think he's fantastic, all-round fantastic striker, but just pure striking ability. I've mentioned it 3 times now, but it was just
that's how good it is.
that was how good it was, and the goal was testament to that, and evidence of that at least. So for me, no debate needed. He's my number 1.
Number 1, mate. Yeah, like I said, I don't think any gasheads are really going to argue with that. if we just go through our lists again. So we both had Easter at 10, didn't we?
Yeah.
Both had Gaffers at 9.
Yeah.
I've actually changed from what you said. I think you're right. I didn't give Harrison the credit he deserves. So for me, it's Collins at 7. Is that the same for you?
I've got Carriola 8, Collins 7.
Carriola 8. So I'm the other way around, I think. I think I would still have Carriola. No, I think I'll stick with what I've got. Then your number 6 is Walker. Yeah, I'd go with that. Harrison 5.
Yeah.
Taylor 4.
4 JCH.
I see your point, but for me, I just think it keeps going in my head. Who would you rather have as a striker?
Yeah.
But I understand your point. 3 Bowden, 2 Taylor for you.
Yeah.
2 JCH for me, and number 1 Lambert. I mean, there's 2 minutes to go. Is there anything you think you might change around?
I think arguably, as you mentioned, you can change the 4-3-2 around quite easily.
Mm-hmm.
Players of probably similar standard, different players themselves. I guess it's just what your preferences are in football in terms of how you pick and choose those 3, but arguably all the same. Should be a 2-2-2, joint second for all of them.
Yeah.
But yes, I agree, and I'd be tempted to put. I think it's quite clear JCH is the better player out of the 3 of them at the moment. He's just been called up to the Jamaican national team as well, which is also a very talented team. They've picked up a few Premier League players with Jamaica.
Maybe that's a bit of recency bias from me.
No, I don't think it is, because as we mentioned, he led the line by himself, whilst Taylor had Gaffers, Easter, Cunnington.
You love dropping him in, don't you?
Yeah. He had a few target men to play with.
Well, I think that's been a great video. I think it'd be really good to do this for midfielders and defenders, where I think we'll probably have a few more options, to be honest. So I'll be interested to see what people have to say in the comments below. But for now, mate, appreciate you coming on, and I'll see you soon.
Perfect. Cheers, mate.
Cheers, pal. Take it easy.